Hello and welcome back to the Comic Literate podcast, the podcast that does deep dives into the best of comic books, graphic novels, mangas, and penny dreadfuls. I'm your host, the soon-to-be known as Comic Stan, and with me, as always, is my astute co-host, it's Jamie. Never mind that we're doing this intro for the second time. Doesn't matter. Ignore
anyone
that.
Would think I'm hearing this for the second time today, but it's fine because shenanigans.
I didn't give you a chance to expose my mistakes. I was like, if I just admit it first, and then no one can... I'll own it before anyone else has a chance to do anything.
What if I wasn't going to say anything about it? What if I was just going to let it roll and let it go?
I mean... I don't trust that you would not take the opportunity to be like, I'm going to jab him a bit with his own mistake.
I'm nice.
I might be as that projection thing where, like, so I would totally do that to you.
100% would have fucking done that.
Exactly. So I just assume you're as mean-spirited as I am. So that's how the world works, isn't it?
No, I'm a very astute, gregarious, zestful person.
I mean, if we're going through all of them, I've got like bloody list of almost 30, but we ain't got time for that because we are back at it again. I mean, before we get into it, how are you feeling?
Yeah, good. I was really low energy, and then you turn the mics on, and it's like, ooh, something magical happens when you turn the mics on, where it's like, suddenly I get this burst of energy.
I think this next setup that we record from will have like a light with a thing, like a red light on.
Yeah, like
so it's
a
like,
recording
red light is on, all systems go, don't swear into the mic. This is one where we're successful, obviously. We're never going to stop swearing. I guarantee that now.
No, that's the best thing about the podcast is that we do swears. It's the only reason that people in 25 countries listen to it.
It's going to be the
25 countries, Ryan.
Yeah, it's going to be
25.
It's going to be the selling point from the YouTube videos, which I eventually will get onto. But it'll be the come to the podcast where we do swears. Yeah.
So I was thinking about this earlier, and this can go on They Did the Math. We have been listened to in more than 10% of the world, Ryan.
And even if it's one person in that entire country who downloaded the episode and never listened to it, it still counts.
Fucking A, it counts.
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone in Israel that listens to the podcast.
And all the other countries as well.
Yeah, but particularly
Israel just sounds the most exotic.
Israel was like number 6 or 7 on a list.
Yeah, and above them were all the boring English-speaking countries. Who cares about them?
Yeah, and so Israel was the first one that I went, oh, that's interesting. That's a little bit spicy, isn't it?
And look, we had one person in like a Latin American country, which you can't even forgotten the name of.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, no, it's a good time to be back recording and talking about a comic. And it's an interesting one because we're coming from different places again, like whichever one might have come out the week before this episode comes out. But
don't look at me, mate. I ain't got a scoop.
I tell you what, before we get into that, I've got a little bit of news, right?
Right, okay.
What's the news? A little bit of news that kind of needs to go in this episode because it's the next one that'll come out and it's kind of time-sensitive news. So we have got a bit more news that's, while not yet newsworthy, I feel like it will be. They announced, DC announced at Comic-Con that they're releasing some animated movies, which they do all the time, and they are generally good. If you like DC, their animated films and stuff and even TV shows are all really good, for the most part.
You've always spoken highly of them, yeah.
Exactly. They announced what they're doing next. One of them was Crisis of Infinite Earths, which is big crossover.
Is one of them Blue Beetle?
No, it's not Blue Beetle.
Then why are you telling me? What? The only thing I like in the DC universe.
A bit of patience and you'll fucking see.
Well, fucking is it fucking Supergirl?
No, even better. Oh. Even better. I guarantee this. You know exactly why it's news. They are doing a animated adaptation of Watchmen.
Sick.
And the reason
is Alan Moore really pissed off about it?
So the reason it's not yet news is because we haven't heard from Alan Moore yet, because no one's dared ask him.
Nobody is dared draw him out of his lair for long enough to go, feel about the animated version of Watchmen that's coming out.
The thing is, the realistic version is no one's bothered to interrupt him. Is just normal, everyday life where he's talking about everything else, like his current writing and you know his normal stuff like that. No one's gone, excuse me, Mr. Moore, I'm so sorry, but we have to ask. I know you're not going to be happy, but we have to get the quote for the website. What do you think of the new Watchmen adaptation? And what do you think? What's your best guess that his reaction's going to be?
What do you fucking think I think about it, you fucking man, baby?
Yeah, something like that. Or just, I don't fucking care. Something like that. Leave me alone.
I love that we both do an Alan Moore impression that sounds nothing like Alan Moore at this point.
Yeah, because he's from, from
the Midlands.
Southampton
he's
or
from the
something?
Midlands,
yeah. And neither of us are really good at accents.
No.
Despite my various attempts, I don't think I've ever actually nailed one, I would say.
Yeah.
I can barely do a Norfolk accent, and that's saying something.
I'm pretty good at that, my man.
I could do you got a Louis boy, but that's about it.
Can you try that for me one more time, please?
Here you go, Louis boy.
So how you got a light boy?
Yeah, I done it.
How you got a light boy? How you got a light? You want a treat, podcast listener? Look up "Have You Got a Light Boy" by Alan Smethurst, the Singing Postman. Have you ever heard this?
I've not, no.
It's basically me as a folk musician.
And you're already a folk musician, so that's crazy.
It's like it's what I think you think I sound like.
Right.
So it's an old man with a deeply Norfolk accent singing about Molly Hindley. I don't think her surname's Hindley.
I mean, it sounds like it's from before, so it sounds like an older time.
And she smokes like a chimney, but she's his little nicotine gal. And it's just a song where she asks him for a lighter often. Right. But it's magical. And Alan Smethurst, Singing Postman, "Have You Got a Light Boy?" It needs to become the official song of the podcast. I
mean, at this point, I think we get a new one every episode. At one point, it was in the I can't remember which episode it was, but it was the episode where you brought up the woman from the 30s.
Yeah, the one who sings about fucking that was her pubes come off.
Yeah, that was Demon Slayer. So that was a very odd one to bring it up in. But...
Well, that was on the playlist for when you read the comic. I don't think I've ever asked for something to be the official song of the podcast. So this is my formal request to you, Ryan.
All right.
For this to be the official song of the podcast.
I will allow it as long as I literally don't have to do anything to facilitate it or lift a finger in response to it.
10 years later, Ryan's still having to talk about this song. And he's like, no, I fucked up.
As long as if talking about it, that's fine. As long as I physically don't have to move my hands to do anything, then I'm all for it.
Official song of the podcast, baby.
It's like whenever anyone's like, I'm a bit of a, this is about off topic, I'm a bit of a Grinch, and whenever anyone mentions something like, should we put Christmas decorations up? I'm like, you can. Like, I'm fine with other people doing it. It's like, oh, you can help? Nah.
Have you ever put a tree up in your home?
I have, yeah. It wasn't my choice. It wasn't my idea, but I've taken part in it. I've been emotionally manipulated into putting up Christmas trees.
I once ended up buying a Christmas tree last minute, like middle of December. And the Christmas trees were on offer, but the stands that the Christmas trees go in weren't on offer. But I was renovating my place at the time, so I just buried the cunt in concrete. I just set it in concrete. And then in January, I had to dispose of a Christmas tree set in concrete. Getting rid of a Christmas tree is made more difficult when you add like 30 kilos of concrete.
If only someone could have seen that coming. If only someone could have predicted.
I think we should get on topic, Ryan.
Yes.
I've had enough fun.
Okay. I mean, I can see why. So, we're talking about a title that might be a bit... If you've seen the episode title, you might be a bit like, what's that? Well, it's a limited series released by Boom Studios called, we go with Mosely? I read it as Mosely.
Are you telling me that everybody who listens to the podcast isn't a diehard Mosely fan?
I mean, at this point, he might be. I mean, they might be, of him.
Singular pronoun, first person singular.
He, the audience.
It was a second person singular.
He, the audience, is one of our dads.
Oh, which one?
Probably yours. But yeah, so we're doing this Child Mosely. It's a limited series released by Boom Studios, and the reason we're doing it, this is one of the rare ones this month that's not like a tie-in with anything, that we're not piggybacking off the back of, you know...
but we don't talk about that. We don't talk about how shameless we are.
I like to be upfront, and I think if you're going to be a shameless, like...
Whore.
Yeah, except for that. Sell out, I was going to say, maybe. If you're going to be it, at least be just open and upfront about it.
For the listeners, I've argued against it many times and always lost.
I feel like it's more insidious to try and do it without people realizing than to just be like, look, here's what's happening.
Yeah,
like, we're playing the game. So we thought this one was one I saw the blurb of, and I thought that sounds really interesting. I would like to cover in the episode. So I told you about it. You said that sounds interesting. Let's do it.
Well done. That was an accurate recantation of what happened.
Of our conversation. Just with less alcohol.
Were we drunk that day?
I think we were drinking.
Nice.
Which is always an important distinction. So I was like, were you drunk? It's like, I was drinking.
Yeah, I don't know that I was drunk.
I wouldn't call it drunk, personally. But so do you want me to get into the blurb?
Get into the blurb, because I'm so bad at it. And you've got a very spicy Jamie today.
I'm giving you this one off this week, only because, again, the reason we did it, especially for me, was because I saw this blurb and thought that looks interesting. So
this is the interesting blurb that you saw.
Yeah, to give the listener like a kind of view of like, hey, there's this comic. It's about this. We should do it. So the blurb is, in the hyper-technological world of the later 21st century, Mosely is a bitter old janitor on a mission from a higher power to unleash holy hell upon the too-big-to-fail tech gods. Can one man bring down the corporate powers who have used their vast influence to oppress an all-too-complacent human race and hopefully win back the favor of his estranged family while he's at it? Mosey's taken up the holy hammer, and you better believe he's going to smash some shit until he sets mankind free.
Well done.
I think I've given that maybe a bit more enthusiasm than I actually have for the actual comic itself.
You didn't like it, did you?
I was not a fan, no. And again, the reason I'm bringing up the blurb especially is because it sounded like just a cool, fun, like guy rebelling against society kind of thing. And especially when it uses the term the too big to fail tech gods, I thought that's a very important phrase in human society now.
Yeah, it is. Too big to fail.
A lot of people don't realize how detrimental to human society that phrase and thinking.
Yes.
Just financial crisis in general. Just 2008 financial crisis. We can't lock up bankers for gambling with the economy. They're too big to fail.
Yeah.
And then they just kept doing it. So seeing that, I thought, ooh, there's something here. Maybe it's a little deeper. And I read it and I went, not only is it not deep, but it pretends to be deep, or it tries to be deep without actually being deep. I've gone a bit. What did you think of it?
It's fine.
Just fine?
Yeah, I mean, I've reflected on it. We had a conversation about it after we read it, and I was feeling quite positive about it. And then I reread certain chunk, kind of reflected on it a little bit, and was left feeling less positive about it.
So you're kind of getting more closer to where I am?
For different reasons, I think.
Tell you how much I didn't like it, and it's going to sound weird. I didn't like it so much, I read it twice.
Wow, you disliked it that much?
So what it was, to me, there were kind of these glaring holes in the story. So when I read it the first time, I thought, if I make these like accusations against the writing, I didn't want to risk, they're such glaring holes that I didn't want to be like, what if I've missed something, or I've been like the lazy dumb one who's just not read a bit or missed it. So I thought I'm gonna go through it a second time just to make sure that my issues are valid. And they are. And I actually picked up new ones on the second read.
Okay.
So yeah, that's where I'm coming from. Do you want me to get into everything first, or do you want to start?
Oh God, I'm not in the mood to be ranted at.
I mean, that's the podcast.
I might just leave, and I live here.
You could join me in the rant.
I mean, I don't want to shit on this so much. I don't. Yeah, I quite liked it. I thought it was all right.
Okay. What did you like about it?
I enjoyed his relationship with his daughter, seeing that play out, and I enjoyed his casual descent into being a bitter old man, and I liked the way it looked.
I did like the art. I enjoyed the art.
I mean, let's face it, you once wholeheartedly defended a comic book where the eyes weren't pointing in the same direction.
And this is going to be the opposite of that. But I genuinely enjoyed the art. I enjoyed the art. I thought the panels were cool. The panel layout I thought was good, and I enjoyed the kind of big spectacle panels.
It looked good, and I thought it was a very knowing take on our current state of play where artificial intelligence is concerned.
See, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. It feel like either it's just a plot, either it's a point of here's the enemy and he's rebelling against this AI tech god, right? And if that's it, and it's just a bit of fun action kind of thing, then I'm all on board. Great, let's do it. But then it starts to do this they made humanity forget themselves, and then they offered us safety in exchange for our freedom, and you start getting into this pseudo philosophical bollocks, and then that's the point. I'm all right, what you want to be judged on? Do you want to be a fun action, or do you want to actually say something about AI and society and complacent, humanity and all that?
Two things can be true,
but I feel by being half one, not fully committing to one or the other, it's a detriment to the comic, because I don't think it does either. It does a bit of both, but neither well enough that it works. Do you know what I mean?
No.
So
the action's fun.
The action is fun at points. So when he's fighting these big tech gods, by the way, we're just going straight into it. No spoil. We're going straight to spoilers. It's 5 issues. I don't recommend it. Maybe Jamie does. I don't know.
I will find out.
We'll find out. But go into if you want to see what we're talking about. If not, just listen to this. So there's big tech gods that rule humanity, and the fights with those bits can be fun. But all along, I'm wondering, like, what? Like, I look for a bit of like an emotional attachment. Like, why is this happening? Like, why am I rooting for this guy? And that's I suppose my biggest issue. And I think this spans everything else. I didn't empathize enough with this guy and his plight to root for him in these big fights.
But the plight wasn't his. The plight was everyone.
But what was the issue?
Well, you saw how fucking broken and dystopian their world was.
Yeah, but also, like, it didn't give a good enough reason for me to be like, oh no, they've been subjugated by, these tech gods. Like,
I mean, you're looking forward to being subjugated by our AI overlords, though, aren't you?
I mean, maybe I'm genuinely looking at the point of, like, it seems like everyone's, chosen this life and consented to it, and you've just got this one, like, annoying old curmudgeon in the corner who's like, bloody kids on their smartphones. You know what I mean? Like, it had this feeling of, like, an old man knocking phones out of teenagers' hands, going, like, I'm setting you free, like,
Yeah, and I agree with the old man, because the thing is, by your concerns with this also hold true for 1984.
Yeah.
And so you could make the same complaint about one of the greatest pieces of literature and everyone would look at you and go, that's stupid.
But it wasn't Big Brother in 1984? Am I using that right? Is Big Brother as the group, or is that just like a nickname in it?
It's just a name for it, yeah.
Okay, but it still gets to the point. So isn't Big Brother, aren't they like an actual dictatorship? Like they're actually like, doing horrible things to people in that?
No, they're just so the malcontents, yes, they are.
Right.
Anybody that tries to break free. But isn't that the same thing that happens here? But the moment he tries to break free, they try and neutralize him.
No, the moment he starts destroying shit with a magic hammer, like, isn't that the point where they're like, yeah, we can't be having that going on?
Yeah, but the magic hammer's a metaphor.
Yeah, but nothing's happened to him. He's just suddenly decided he gets mugged by that baby and his robots, right? Yeah. So if anyone knows, right, there's a baby who's upgraded
really dumb.
And even that was just like funny. Like I enjoyed that. It was a bit of fun. And then he almost dies from his heart, which is bad, which never gets brought up again.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And then he gets this magic being contacts him and basically gives him these powers and hammer, and he says, "Free my people." Which also another point. Is humanity his people? You would guess you could infer from that?
This has a better call to adventure than 90% of the superhero comic books that you get moist over.
I disagree.
But how does it not? How does I need to run really fast because my wife doesn't recognize me anymore? How is that a better call to adventure than my people are being subjugated by an AI overlord?
So one, in The Flash, he goes back to save his mum, who died. Saving a loved one from death is a very common use in stories and a good one.
Fucking Barry, bitch bumbling about for the 5 issues, and then Superman Batman's dead dad turns up and saves him.
And execution, I agree, Flash sucked for that on that basis. But in terms of just like a core, like call to arms, like going back in time and saving a loved one from dying is like basic stuff, right? When it comes to like hero's motivation.
Damn selfish. It's stupid.
Yeah, then that's the journey and the growth the character goes through.
Whereas this guy,
not executed well, I'll give you that, but that was the
point.
A
literal god gave him a shining hammer and said, use of thine magic hammer to destroyeth that which you already don't like. And he went, fuck yeah. Okay. Like, it makes perfect sense.
But what if in whatever you would deem to be like a perfect society? So imagine you're in a perfect society. Imagine one guy doesn't like it. So already what you've deemed perfect society, everything's great by your opinion. One guy in the corner doesn't like it. And then a god goes, that guy, I'm giving him a magic hammer so he can destroy everything. You'd be like, you would hate it.
Maxwell's silver hammer came down. That was an
isolated serial killer who somehow killed a judge in the courtroom because he had a hammer that no one checked for. Bad Beatles writing.
Bad Beatles writing. Terrible. Very naughty of you, Paul McCartney.
But also, the magic being never gets explained.
No. It's just like, have my magic. Taketh thy magic hammer.
At one point towards the end, they go, hey, do you think we'll ever know who that guy was? And Moss is like, nah, I think we're going to be just all right without him. It's like, that's bad.
Perfect, beautiful in every way.
I feel like this is going to be our second The Ones episode. And I'm not even going to go into my normal notes that I made in the first read through. I'm just going to go by the notes I made in my reread because they're more like directed to the specific issues I had.
So I did take umbrage with the fact that the AI had become literal gods.
If you're looking at it, this is what I was saying before about not knowing how to treat this. If it's just a fun action romp, sci-fi action romp,
that makes sense.
Then yeah, perfect. Like tech gods, like fucking smash them with a magic hammer. Awesome, let's go. Like I'm on board. But it's this trying to be more poignant, deep bollocks that I feel like just misses the mark. I think it makes everything worse by attempting to do too much. Too many cooks? That's like the issue with this.
Yeah,
there's two main things, and by trying to do both, it ruins both. That's why I came off with this.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll go through basically all my issues, and
we don't have to go through all of them.
All right, but again, just the ones from the reread, because I was going through that specifically. Like, am I missing something here? Like, what is the problem? And to be fair, maybe one of my issues, you'll go, oh no, it's this. And I'll go, oh shit, that makes sense. I didn't realize.
Yeah, okay.
So be prepared to possibly correct me in an embarrassing way.
Oh, I will.
I mean, I hope you do, because it means I have to shit on the comic as much. Number one, why is Mosely angry about teaching the robot for a year? And just before we get into that beginning part where he's leaving his, at the time, wife to go do this important thing, and she's sad he's going, and then he goes into this house that's in a weird pop-up neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then there's a robot there waiting for him. At that point, I thought, this is great. I'm really interested in what's going on.
I was super into that,
like, what is happening? And then they just, I mean, as I was saying, they fumbled it afterwards. But why then, throughout the rest of the comic, is he like, God damn, what they did to me 30 years ago? What did they do? Like, he literally says at points, what they did to me, or us, or what they made me lose 30 years ago. Like, what is it that he's talking about there?
Well, he had PTSD after teaching the robot because the robot was super terrifying.
I did not read that. Like, I get that he was not comfortable. I get that he wasn't, like, happy about dealing with the robot. Like, he says they got into subjects that he didn't like and stuff. But it feels like he went from, like, PTSD from being a Marine in the military or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Completely understandable, very, common reason for PTSD. And then he's like, and then I had to talk to a robot for a year.
Well, I think the implication is that the talking to the robot is what gave him PTSD, because he had to talk about deep, dark, powerful human topics with something really non-human.
Is that, do you
imagine having a robot that had no sense of human emotion, probing into your deepest, darkest fears as a human being, and you just have to sit and have that conversation? That would be fucking awful.
I feel like that's... Do you agree with me that that's you're inferring from Limited, or do you think that was obvious?
Yeah, it was really the scene where the robot breaks into his fucking bedroom, waking him up saying, "We need to talk about death," made it very clear to me that is why, because and they set up his PTSD, didn't they? I feel like they set him up as having PTSD. They very, very graphically depicted him suffering with PTSD after that experience.
I feel like that. I get that's what. You're pointing out correctly, that's what they were going for.
Yeah.
It just did not hit for me because I think I just associate his PTSD with being a Marine in the military.
But there's nothing to state that he was a Marine, is there?
Yeah. They do manage several times, and at least enough time, because I was looking for it.
You were hunting for it.
What is the issue here?
So I got the sense that it was him talking about really human things with something completely non-human that had given him the PTSD.
I didn't empathize like that being a thing. Like, now that you're spelling out for me, like, I get it, but at the time reading, I was like, you just talked to a robot for a year. Like, that was my kind of reaction of when he kept talking about how bad it was. I'm like, you just sat there and talked. And it also seemed like you could have left at any time. Like, if he was captured or taken hostage and made to converse with this robot, I think that would have rung true a bit more for me of like, oh no, this horrible thing happened. But he seemingly was either paid or volunteered to talk to a robot for a year.
I think I imagine he was being paid for it.
I mean, maybe, we don't know. But again, either way, it just seemed like his choice. And then he's like, God, what those people did to me. It's like, you seem like you signed up for something, and it wasn't implicated at all that couldn't leave if he wanted to. So that was what was confusing for me about it.
Yeah, maybe. But then, I mean, I'm actually looking at the panel where the robot breaks into his room at night.
Yeah, and that was effective in being like, ooh, there's something wrong with what he did. I'll tell you what I had.
Look at that. Look how scary that is.
Yes. And that is, again, great art. Like, the art, genuinely, I really enjoyed. I cannot stress that enough, how I'm shitting all over this comic. The art was great. But
and then
I tell you what, I read that part, and then I thought, ooh, maybe something has happened that will be revealed later why he's having that dream. And then it never did.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying that it was... I'm saying I was confused by this. And when it comes to things like that, I think it's people can be quick to be like, I was confused by it, so it was bad. And I'm hesitant to jump.
It made perfect sense to me.
I'm hesitant to jump into that way again, but especially because you seemingly had no issue with it. But again, for when I read that part, I thought, oh, there's something we haven't found yet, which is a horrible thing happened when he was talking to this robot. That's what I was waiting for. I was like, what was the horrible thing that happened? When is that going to be revealed? And then it never did. It was just like, no, I didn't like talking to the robot about things in my life. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah,
no, I agree. It's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? But you can see how maybe, they've set up that he's a Marine, and, when he's having those PTSD dreams, his wife says, oh, is it the war?
Yeah.
See how somebody maybe already had his fractured sense of self, or...
And that I enjoyed. Like, that was the part that I was kind of like, ooh, there's something here, and we're going to get more of it. And then we just didn't. Or it was just left as that, wasn't it?
So I liked the subtext of his relationship with his wife as well. I mean, she was cool. Like, you said, oh, there's just this one curmudgeon who doesn't like it, and he starts knocking people's smartphones out of their hands. And then we realised there's a whole community of people who've decided to live outside of the city so they don't have to deal with this stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really interesting way of dealing with that, and kind of the sense that she had been trying to get him to leave for a long time, and he had been reluctant because of his work and all these different reasons.
You know what? That was actually... So when they're having that argument, so that's in one of the flashback sepia-toned parts. Yeah. Classic comic books. Love every time. But in that argument, I thought that was the best writing, or like the best dialogue, because it made all the sense. Yeah. She's like, they're building tech gods. And he's like... come on, you're being crazy. It's like, no, we have to leave the sea. And he's like, you can. And it's like, well, I'm taking the kid. And he's like, no, like, you're being crazy. You can go, but you leave the kid here because I'm not uprooting her life because you're being overly paranoid and crazy about this, right? All that I was perfectly on board for. I was like, this is the most sense this comic has made.
Yeah.
And then later he's like, to the gods, like, 30 years ago, you took everything from me. It's like, no, that was you. That was you, mate.
Yeah, and isn't that just him being a flawed person? Isn't that just him being a flawed character?
So generally...
So what you're seeing is somebody misremember events in their life the way that humans do. You're watching a human be human.
Okay,
but amongst a bunch of robots.
But at no point is he like... I don't think at any point he's explicitly like, you know what, I've actually been a bit of a dick, or that was my fault. Like, there's a general sense of him being stubborn.
Yeah.
And that, I'm looking at that, like, there's something good there, because that's like a humanistic, like, deep thing. And if you can attach that stuff correctly to big, bombastic, ridiculous action stuff, then you're golden. Because that, when you combine that stuff, like John Wick, like, works so well, because it was big, bad action, amazing, choreographed fights. And at the core of you had guy who's
really sad that his dog is dead.
Yeah. And that works so well.
I like it how dead dog beats wife left me in the Ryan list of reasons to do
To
shit.
be fair, that dog was given to him by his dead wife who died from cancer. So
right, okay,
it's got that extra level.
It's the dead wife cancer dog.
Yeah. But like,
I've never seen John Wick. I don't know.
They're really good. Highly recommend.
No, I've heard great things. I've heard nothing but good things, and that has made me not want to watch them.
I mean, I explained recently how I was the same with Game of Thrones, so I can't 100%. Talk. Yeah. But I didn't get across that mostly it was like, you know what? Maybe it's not all the tech gods' fault. Maybe it is my own fault. At no point was he like that. He's always just like, the tech gods, that they're the reason everything sucks, and that I'm justified in destroying them with a hammer.
Until the point at which he actually talks to his wife.
Which part?
When he goes out to see her, and he apologizes. And
does he apologize in that first part? I remember him apologizing. I'm just trying to place was that in the first meeting?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. And so, you know, he makes amends with her, but then I think when he's right there in front of the tech gods, it's hubris and he's misattributing stuff, but he's just angry and he's about to swing his magic hammer at a fucking villain. Like, it's pure comic book shenanigans, isn't it?
So I see what you mean. Like, if with the comic books, with the superhero ones, I feel like their problem is normally they're very overly basic. Like, they're normally quite basic, quite over expositional, and, you know, 1, 2, 3, here's the plot kind of thing. With this, I felt like I was struggling to make sense of it. And that was the problem, especially for a plot like this. And again, if they had just gone more basic with the plot of, like, they're these dystopian dictator tech gods and I'm going to destroy them. But I feel like the motivation gets muddled in trying to make it deeper.
Yeah.
And also by having him talk to that robot 30 years ago, I feel like that complicates it because they keep trying to reference back to it. And again, from my experience, I was just like, what was the issue? Like, at worst, what I read was he's like, I feel bad for contributing to the
Well, that was certainly one layer of it, wasn't it?
But then that feels like, I mean, like, as you've gone on about before, everyone's helped train the AI that we're about to deal with.
Fucking, I know. Have you seen are you having the porn bot advertised to you at the moment?
Luckily not, no.
Really? Even though you're on the apps?
No, I've not had any porn bots.
So YouTube is frantically trying to advertise this fucking AI app to me. And it's like, by the way, it will talk dirty to you and send you an SFW pictures. That was the literal ad campaign. And I was like, oh, I'm a man, but I'm a man in the right age bracket. And so he's trying to shill AI porn on me.
You know why I don't get that? Is I turned off any specific targeting ads, which you can do on Google.
Yeah.
And just as you say, by being a man within a certain age, they're like, oh, we'll get this.
He wants AI porn.
Yeah. So I've turned that off, so I get the most generic ads just over and over again, which I much prefer that than when you Google something and then suddenly start getting ads all the time for that thing. But yeah, like, everyone helped train the AI. That's just the thing. And again, this comes back to the root thing of, I don't get why he was so upset talking to the robot. And by him being like, I feel so bad for contributing, it's like, you're probably one of like hundreds, if not thousands.
It feels to me as though you've been unable to suspend your disbelief for that one bit.
It's not
comic,
it's not that it's
completely ruined your ability to enjoy any of the rest of it because you're like, I don't know why talking to the robot was so bad.
It's not that I can't.
You've come back to it like 4 times.
Yes, and it is a core thing. Why were you so upset by it?
Because it traumatized him.
Why?
It turned up in the middle of the night, roused him from his bed.
I had a bad dream about one thing, and now I'm
covered the room in tentacles and said, "Tell me about death, boy."
I had one bad dream about something, and now I'm going to destroy society because of it.
He doesn't destroy society. He rebuilds society with his golden hammer.
I mean, he destroys it, and then he's like, "Oh God, it's a good thing there's some people around to help rebuild it." Like, I didn't think about that before I started, but
he makes that one kid who tried to mugged him piss himself.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was good.
I enjoy that.
That was a fun moment.
It's not suspension of disbelief. It's literally not understanding motivation or not understanding character points. Like, I don't get what was so bad. All he did was talk to the robot, and the robot went, "Oh, tell me more."
And then it enslaved humanity.
Yeah, that's a separate argument. Because
so are you not able to understand how spending a year with a malevolent artificial intelligence that then went on to enslave humanity might be a bit traumatizing?
I can see why you might generally feel a bit bad about it, but also it's like I said, he wasn't the only one. Like, he didn't create the thing. I see why his daughter feels bad towards the end. Like, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, she was literally working with them and helping them and everything. He was like one of probably 1 million people who was like part of this test thing.
Yeah, but he came away from that test traumatized. Like,
why? That's what I keep coming back to. And I'm not trying to be I hope that you and the listeners will understand. I'm not trying to be difficult for the sake of difficult.
He's being difficult for the sake of being difficult.
I'm not trying to just pick holes in it because I don't like it. Like, that is the crux of the motivation. I'm like, why was that traumatizing?
Because
why was the robot scary?
Because the robot was mean to him.
What? When was it?
I literally showed you the panel.
That was a dream. That wasn't the robot. That was a dream.
Okay, that was a dream.
Yeah, that's what if that dream had happened in real life, I would 100% got it. Like, the robot stuck into your room and threatened death. Like, yeah, that's traumatizing.
Wait a minute. Was that a dream or was that just
It was definitely a dream. He woke up like afterwards, like, when they wake up, like when they shoot, you've never shot up in bed after a nightmare.
Yeah.
But fictional characters do it all the time.
All the time.
He did that, yeah.
Okay, so it was a dream. So it was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine. Okay. Well, like, I should
say, if anyone can hear it, we've got a cat in here that's especially frisky right now, so you're going to hear meows in the background.
Yeah, no, they don't really, you are right. They never really get into what traumatized them so badly.
And
I just kind of went, those freaky AIs fucked that dude up a little bit.
And the problem is, as I said, because it invites you to read more into it, I'm trying to read more into it, and then I'm finding these holes. And I'm going, well, hang on, why is any of this happening now? And if it just hadn't bothered trying to be overly deep, it could have been a more fun, hey, evil tech gods have taken over society, and I'm going to destroy them with my magic hammer. I would have been like, brilliant. Let's do it.
Let's fucking go for it.
But they went too far in attempting to do extra, but not very well, in my opinion. And it ruins every other part of it. It's like trying to add an ingredient to a dish that shouldn't belong.
Yes.
And now not only have you ruined the ingredient you added, but you've ruined the rest of the dish as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. No, I do. I understand. Sorry. I'm going back through trying to work out what
this is why I did a second read. Because I was like, hang on, have I missed something?
Well, I skimmed back through it the other day because I read it a while ago. Because this episode got delayed for whatever reason. I think it was my fault. In fairness,
it was just saying this economy.
In this economy.
Great panel.
Fucking great.
Great art. And again, some parts were really cool. In my first read through, I made a note that the part where he is first going up against the first tech god, and it rises out of like the building it's in, and all the tentacles. You don't even see that part. It cuts to it's just out and it's there. But the size and like the contrast and like the scale of the tech god to Mosely, that part I'm like, this is awesome. Like I want to see this fight. I'm excited. I'm happy. But at that point, I was still young and naive. I was like, and I'm sure that other stuff will get explained later. It'll be a really good payoff.
Yeah, you're right. It never really goes into telling us why he was so traumatized by his experience. I may have just headcanoned that,
And I'll tell you what, it's paced and written in a way that almost makes you forget the holes. Or, it kind of paces in a way where it's like, come on, catch up. We're done with that now. Let's go.
Yeah.
And it almost doesn't allow the reader to dwell on things. But because I'm such a pedantic, annoying comic book nerd, I'm going, well, no, hang on. I'm going to stop and I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and understand this because I think I missed something.
I mean, it helps that I'm a bit technophobic when it comes to AI.
I did think, like, when I read the blurb, I thought, who's going to love this rebelling against AI overlords?
Yeah, it helps that I'm like, I genuinely believe that AI is our biggest existential threat as a species.
Was this your version of, like the normal, like, masculine men of, like, the 90s and 80s who were like, Arnold Schwarzenegger's beating up terrorists, and I'm on board. Like, was this your version of that?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
You're like, instead of like, fuck the commies, you're like, fuck a ChatGPT.
Fuck ChatGPT, yeah. And which is the porn AI that Google is desperately trying to get me to download at the moment.
And now you've just advertised it to all our listeners.
Yeah, can we bleep it out?
I mean, we can do, but also, as I said, this episode title probably won't gain as much attention
There's
anyway.
no one listening anyway.
So say what you want.
Oh, God, isn't it nice to know that everything you do is futile?
So the 3 people who listen to this episode,
this
will be one that once we get more established later on, then people do I listened to your back catalogue. It's like, I listened to that Mosely episode.
Fucking hell.
Things went a bit off the rails in that one. This is like for future historians kind of episode.
for my memoirist, for my biographer.
Yeah. But then, so coming back to, like, obviously the main motivation, again, we've established the issues I have with that, but also he does seem to just be ruining everyone else's time. Like, he's like, I'm not happy with how things are, so I'm going to start smashing shit with a hammer.
And I think, and I got that sense as well, but I read through that because it's like, actually, these people don't, it's tough, isn't it?
And then here's the thing. it goes into a little bit of nuance when after he defeats the first tech god and he destroys, what was it, the stream, was it?
Yeah.
So it's like a virtual reality plugin kind of thing, right? Because real world so sucks so much because what the tech god's done to it, but they offer the stream, people could do that instead. And he basically ends up destroying it, and then he goes to the people, it's like, hey, everyone, I've liberated you, and they're angry at him, and they throw shit at him because they've destroyed the thing. There was a chance there, and an attempt at a bit of nuance of like, on the one hand, you could look at it as, maybe Mosley's not doing as much good as he thinks he is for everyone else, because everyone else is pissed off. Or maybe it's the nuance of subjugated people get used to the prison with which they're subjugated into.
Yeah.
So it touches on that a bit, and then never again.
Yeah.
It's just like, move past it now. It's fine. Don't worry about how they felt. They were angry, but we're past it now.
Yeah, maybe.
And again, that's my issue of like, it gets a little bit deep, but then not enough to justify it, but just enough that it makes you question the actions of a action hits, like an action film lead. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
Like, it would have been worse watching, I don't know, Commando, if you're like, what are the global political implications of blowing up this helicopter? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
by adding a little bit of doubt, but not enough to do anything with it or justify introducing in the first place, you're just kind of making everything worse. And again, I feel like the curmudgeon. I feel like the Mosely of the Mosely comic book. Like, I'm rebelling against it with my hammer of pedantic criticism. And I could be in the wrong because maybe everyone else loves it. Maybe everyone else is having a grand old time with it, and I'm the grumpy old man in the corner who's like, I don't like this. It doesn't do proper storytelling.
How did you feel about his relationship with his daughter?
I didn't feel good enough about the character to justify. So like, it could have been written well, but there's one part in particular which I was like, that's a bit fucked. He's like, hey, tell me how you doing. We hardly see each other. Like, what's going on? What's going on with Ruby? What's going on with Ruby's world or whatever? It's like, you're not going to want to hear about it. And he's like, no, I will. Tell me everything about you. I want to hear everything that's going on in your life right now. And she's like, well, at work, I was like, I don't want to hear about it. It's like, what the fuck, man? And again, if we were exploring this like difficult character and like an arc or like, just like, interesting, anti-villains and everything like that. Like, people don't have to be like pure morally good or everything, but you have to do something with that. And it just felt like he was not only an asshole at times for his own stubbornness, which they kind of address when he apologizes to his wife later.
Yeah.
But not in a way that he's like, I'm going to try and be better, or I'm sorry I did specifically this or that or anything. But it's like, no, he's a hero. Like, he's fighting the good fight and he's beating the tech gods and everything's going to be fine because of the choices that he's made. And I'm like, well, which is it? Is he a difficult character with some depth that we have to kind of navigate? Or is he just like, is he John Wick, where he's just doing good all the time?
And I think there's some element of the fact that the story after the comic book finished would have been a more interesting story.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen what happens next.
So watching them rebuild society without the AI and watching him and his daughter have a real relationship and his wife.
Yeah.
Watching them try and be a family after so long of not having been a family and their daughter having been so thoroughly programmed by this AI. That would have been interesting, and we don't really get any of that.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a small bit when they're on like the post helicopter, where the mum literally saves the door, and Dora's like, "Oh, you think you could just walk back in after 30 years or whatever?" And I'm like, "That's good. That's interesting. We follow that at all?" Nope. It's just like, deal with it.
Play happy families.
Yeah, deal with it.
Afterwards.
That fucking magic being is the biggest, most obvious like plot point. Like, I would say human plot point, like ethereal plot point. Where it's like, oh shit, how do I explain the magic powers? Put in this guy. It's like, ooh, I need the mum to save the daughter. How do I get the mum into the area? Magic being tells her.
Yeah.
It's just like, what is the... They don't explain the magic being, but also when you are blatantly using them, it's just like, that'll fill in the cracks. Like,
yeah.
He only appears to Mosley because he was dying in an alley at one point. Except for the one time when he also appears to Mosley's wife. Like, why? Like, is it people with the surname Mosley? Like, is that the requirement? Ex Machina. It's such a Deus Ex Machina, but it's not even in, like, the final part. Because the Deus Ex Machina of the final part is just Mosley's powers.
Yeah.
But in even just beats during it's Deus Ex Machina in just the setup, the build-up.
Yeah.
Surely, if you're going to be bold-faced enough to use a Deus Ex Machina, it's normally like right at the end.
Yeah.
Everything's almost lost. Oh, wait, the hand of God. Like, this is like hand of God just nudging, like, can you just get over there so we can get on with the story?
Can you just pop her over there quickly?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, all right, you get one.
Hand of the writer, like, oh shit, can you just, your daughter's going to be in trouble in a bit. Can you get over there?
Fuck, I've written myself into it. Oh, fuck, just you, hand of God, fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it does read like that, doesn't it?
And there's so many little bits where I was like, this is the point. Those are kind of my biggest like issues. And then as we've kind of experienced on this podcast is when you already have like a big like problem with a title like this, you start picking up on the little things
because you start looking for them.
And I think that's all fiction, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
like if you like a film, you ignore issues, whereas if you don't like a film, then you see more of the problems. The bit where he's talking to his daughter's first got accepted into the thing, and he's like,
they're on the kitchen table together.
And he's like, I don't like the robots. And she's like, I know, Dad, but you won't explain why. And I'm like, I'm still waiting for why.
And that would have been a perfect opportunity for him to explain why, wouldn't it?
And
all they needed to do was think of, right, no, I'm angry with you now. All they needed to do was think of one good reason.
All he needed to do.
Oh my God, yes.
Imagine how much would have been fixed if he went... If he had just literally been like, I went to the robot, and then I was telling him about my life, and then he called me an idiot, and I was like, what'd you do that for? And the robot was just evil all day. I'll be like, that's motivation. Like, you've been wronged by the robot in a way that I can empathize with. But you don't even get that.
You know that episode of Community where Troy gets into the acting class?
Oh, yeah, and he makes up I actually have trauma.
Yeah, because he had no trauma. All they needed was for him to just go, the robot
was
did things to me.
Yeah, like, that makes sense.
The robot touched me in my no-no box, and everyone would have been like, that makes perfect sense.
It would have made the dream a lot weirder, though.
Fucking
the dream would have had to have been a lot more in-depth.
But no, you're right. They just needed to give him one reason to hate the robots, and this entire thing would have made sense.
One small fix. We did this with other titles, so this is a good running thing. Like, how could we have made it better? For me, I think you've nailed it right on the head.
No,
one little bit of motivation.
Yeah, no, you have.
But it's just the bit I was missing. I was like, where is? I had to read it a second time to be like, have I missed it? Is it just one line? It's like, by the way, the robot was inappropriate with me.
Yeah, have I missed the one panel? Yeah, it just needed one fucking panel where he said, the robot called me a cunt once. And I'd have, we wouldn't have had this entire conversation because you'd have been like, yeah, cool.
I understand the motivation.
I don't know if that says more about you or the comic.
I mean, again, I'm a very pedantic comic book nerd.
Yeah.
And this is what is interesting, especially, like, and you are right to point out, like, a lot of bollocks happens in superhero stuff, right? My argument, and I'm saying argument because it's not objectively right, like, everyone has their own opinions, but from my perspective, superhero shenanigans or bollocks or whatever, it happens within their universe. Like, they create these rules for them to follow, and then you can have a cosmic treadmill, which is like the shorthand.
Fucking cosmic treadmill.
That's become the shorthand for superhero shenanigans.
Yeah, it has, hasn't it?
But in that world, they said, hey, there's the Speed Force, and you can time travel, but you need a cosmic treadmill to be able to do it. I'm like, fine. Because none of that stuff is like especially plot-based. Like, as far as I know, I might be wrong, at no point is the Flash go, I would go back in time, but I've misplaced my cosmic treadmill.
Well,
like,
that's literally what he said. He said, I need a cosmic... No, he's like, has anyone got a cosmic treadmill? And somebody's like, oh, yes, I happen to have brought one with me.
Well, no, because then, I mean, I could get into it, but then he then realizes without a cosmic treadmill, he can go back in time, but he needs to be the only speedster, because the more speedsters there are, the less...
Speed force there is to go around.
It's a finite, like, it's like Wi-Fi. If you got too many people on the Wi-Fi, it doesn't work.
Are you seeing where I'm coming from now as you explain this to me?
Contrived, definitely. Like, very contrived. But it's all within its own universe's rules. And with this title, that's not even getting into the magic stuff. Because that's just, like, way more bollocks, in my opinion. We're just talking about character motivation, which is its own thing.
Yeah.
And then in that conversation he's having with his daughter, he uses, like, you know, that story metaphor thing that all fiction does, where it goes like, you know what, when you were, in this instance, like, when she was young, like, I knew how stubborn she was, because when she was a child, she decided she didn't like shitting, So she became voluntarily constipated and then eventually just she was rushed to hospital and then she was fine shitting after that. He uses that as like my daughter's so stubborn. It's like, from the writing perspective, of all the metaphors you could have introduced to be like, let's show how stubborn she was as a child, you went with voluntary constipation.
No, it was a weird moment.
That was the best choice.
I imagine that absolutely happened to one of the writers because it is a thing.
Oh yeah, I'm not judging at all. Like I'm not criticizing in the way of like that's unbelievable. But you know when you're reading something, you go, hang on, what? Like, why is it that? I'm not like disbelieving it.
Do you know when that happens? Do you know one of the first things the doctor makes you try?
Prune juice?
No.
Smoking? Smoking. I saw it in an episode of House.
Not with a baby. Not with a child.
Are you sure? Because apparently it's very effective.
Fucking dare.
I saw it in House, but that was for a full-grown adult.
Prune juice and a cigarette, yeah. No, they get you to get some olive oil or some baby oil, some kind of oil.
Right.
And a Q-tip. And just massage the arsehole of the child. Courage the poo out.
I mean, that, if he had gone into that, I would have been like, I don't know why they're talking about it, but at least I'm learning something from this comic.
It's fucking weird, isn't it?
It made me think, why,
No, I agree with you. It was really jarring for me too.
The problem with suspension of disbelief, I think we talk about it a lot. We just talk about it and do you believe what is possible happening in the text? So when a Deus Ex Machina happens, it takes you out because you go, oh, that was convenient. Like that brings you out. But this, I was just like, why did the writer choose that of all stories? Like that's what took me out of it.
It was a weird moment, wasn't it?
And I tell you what, in talking about the morality of Mosely, right? Yeah. That one point when I said earlier, I thought it was actually interesting when the crowd was angry at him for destroying the stream. And that was like, you could go somewhere with that, right? And then he powers up and he definitely almost kills
he does,
all those people.
He threatens them all, doesn't he?
Yeah, and what he literally describes those friggin' junkies. I was like, oh, you sound like a right winger going on a rampage.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
And then the magic man, for lack of a better, because we don't have any other name for him.
The magic man.
We don't have any other name for him.
The magic man came to town.
Yeah. He turned up and he was like, oi, don't do that. And Mo was just like, oh, you always ruin my fun when I'm about to kill
Don't go
people.
on a murderous rampage for the people you're meant to be saving.
And again, this is a guy, and there's no redemption from that at all.
No.
There's no like, you know what, I'm quick to anger and I should work on that. That never gets addressed again either.
He just keeps going on murderous rampages.
He just pissed off at the magic man. You know what happens? The magic man goes, no, that's against the rules. And I infer that Mosely goes, can't do that anymore because he might take my powers away again.
Yeah.
Like, that's morally, it's not good to kill random people in the streets.
I mean, that's all headcanon though, isn't it?
Again, and you shouldn't have to attach headcanon
but
to stuff like that.
But you feel that you need to in this instance.
Well, I'm inferring that from the fact that he tries to kill people at one point, was pissed off, and then he doesn't again. Although, to be fair, he's never around people again in his charged up state.
So it's not that he doesn't want to, it's just that he doesn't have the opportunity.
He doesn't really get another opportunity again, does he?
No, you are right. He does go a bit murder hobo.
Just goes around people when he's like not charged up. He's like, all right, I'm calm now. But that's like I'm trying to think of the equivalent. It's like the Hulk. It's like, if I kill people when I'm hulked up, that's on you for being near me when I'm hulked up. When I'm Bruce Banner, it's fine. But, that's it. Yeah, that's just a point that made me go, what is this character? Are we meant to like him or not?
Yeah. I don't know that we're meant to like Mosely.
Well, this is the question, isn't it? Because at points, we're rooting for him against these tech gods and stuff. So surely you should... he's not explicitly enough an anti-hero or anything for it to be complex, is it?
So, let's read this as metaphors. Let's, for a moment, stop reading this as a straight text and start reading this text for metaphors.
Okay.
What do you think Mosely would be a metaphor for?
Disgruntledness against modern technology, essentially.
And
humanity's complacency with subjecting themselves through technology.
Well, that's certainly what the world in itself is.
Yeah.
And so actually, on some level, I think that us not having the tech that we have anymore would be an overwhelmingly positive thing for human beings and their emotional states and our general health. Do I think anybody would like it in the moment? No, I think we'd all hate it. And so if you read the text as metaphor, Mosely makes perfect sense.
Yes, but again, in a way that
look at how much. Imagine if a government, for instance, tried to say, I actually think that AI is really dangerous and we shouldn't have it in our country. Imagine the fucking backlash from the corporations and from the consumers.
Yeah, of course, 100%. But that and that it should be the role of the governments to not roll over to the corporations. In a perfect world, that would be the case, and it's not. But the problem I'm getting here is, if the metaphor is people are subjugating themselves through technology, then it's the equivalent here is if a guy like destroyed the power grid and was like, I've saved everyone from technology. It's like you've just at best mildly inconvenienced a bunch of people, and at worst like taken down the grid that was like keeping people alive.
Food in my freezer go off.
Exactly.
You dickhead, I'm gonna have to buy more nuggies.
No one's going, thank you, sir. I was addicted to TikTok and now I'm cured. Like that's the problem, is if you are going by metaphors of real life and if you are trying to say something, what are you saying? Because what I'm reading from what the metaphor I'm gaining from this text is, you don't like how things are, so you're just going to destroy it all regardless of how everyone else feels.
The use of a higher power.
And I agree that technology is an issue. I agree that like it's a problem and people should like not be so reliant on it and everything. But I don't think the key, like if you're making that an issue, if you're making that the enemy of this comic, then you need to do it in a way where bashing it with a hammer fixes it. Because that's the point of the story, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose,
but they've not made it that. They've made it an insidious, more realistic thing where people are choosing it, and it's the society now. So if you've made it that, you've made it too close to reality, where the cure or the solution doesn't match up with how deep they've gone on it.
This is a reimagining of 1984 or The Matrix, with the assumption that the resolution is one bloke with a hammer.
Yes, and I
see where you're coming. I exactly see your point.
When you mentioned Matrix, that was interesting for me because that made me think of, Neo was essentially like him being the one was the magic hammer of the Matrix. But then in the end of the first film, nothing's really resolved other than he discovers he is the one. He gains the powers.
Nothing is resolved. And again, his power is really cleverly introduced because he has a power within the Matrix because he understands what the Matrix is. That is his power. His power is that he knows that it's a simulation.
Well, and he's connected to it
because
everyone
able
else
to manipulate it.
The others know then, and they can do it to an extent because he's the one. He has these additional, and he sees all the green numbers and everything.
Whereas here, somebody just goes, "Do you want a magic hammer?" Yeah. And he's like, "Yeah, all right.
All right. Save my people, yeah? Wink, wink."
Don't kill too many of them.
Yeah.
Save them.
Save them. Don't kill them. Smash up a few screens. And I tell you what, a big plot point that I feel they didn't even get across as a big plot point until they needed it was the water. Do you know what I mean by the water?
Yeah. The water that had all the stories hidden in it.
I literally made the note several times. What the fuck is up with the water?
Yes. What? No, I agree.
Because that makes a big difference at the end.
Yeah.
At one point when he's sailing through it, and the second god is a hydra for some reason in the water, that they stole humans' memories and put them in this fiber optic water. Yeah. And again, this part, you're going too far. Like, you don't need to do any of this. You are making it more complex for yourself. But they wanted that bit at the end where the water is like life returning to humanity after the destruction of the gods. And the water returns the memories to the people. But I'm like, were these people's memories wiped or not? Were they? Because that's really bad, and you've not gotten across that happened. Because
actually, if you'd made that quite clear at the start that had happened, Ryan would have understood your need to do this.
But did they wipe the memories or not?
I don't know.
And if they did, they stored them in the ocean where literally anyone could go and get them.
Yeah, I see it.
And then when they come back, that one kid like has the tear in his eye where he suddenly remembers that he's a person with a family or something.
Yeah,
it's like, did you honestly forget that before now?
And then right at the end, when the kid who tried to rob him comes back, he's like, "I'll do it for credits though, yo."
Yeah,
and you're like, has he not had the same revelation that everyone else has had?
Yeah. Did you see what happened?
He still seems pretty lost in the sauce. I'm going to be honest with you.
I mean, he grew up in it, so it might be like harder to shake if you were born in it. And I tell you what, at the end, I did really like the circle back to Mosely standing there with the mop and the piss.
Yes.
It was like, it's rewarding it for the bare minimum of like, you came back to the point where we started.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well done. Maybe things aren't so different, actually, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, at the end, they're like, who was that magic man anyway? And he's like, I don't know, but I think we got just what we need from him and we're never going to see him again. Why? Why do you don't know anything about this?
Maybe the magic man is going to come and give somebody else a hammer to destroy whatever society you build.
Exactly, because there's no consistency whatsoever.
We don't know if this magic hammer man is just a malevolent force that wants to see the world burn.
He was like, free my people. We don't know who he was talking about.
Was there not a minute when you were like, is this going to go really racist?
I mean, that was probably the least. I was so wrapped up in everything else. That was probably the least of my worries at that point.
Yeah.
If it had gone, if any other text had gone suddenly racist, I'd be like, well, this text is bad. But if this one had gone, I'd be like, another inconsistency. Like, what do you stand for, Mosely? The comic, not the character. I know what the character stands for. He just hates technology.
Yeah, he just wants to do some smashing.
He literally is the person who's like, kids are on their phones too much. And you're like, all right, what do you suggest? Oh, I don't think they should. Why? But that's all of society revolves around it. So how are you going to fix it? Well, I just don't think they should. Yeah. Well, great. You've identified a problem with no solution whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's the kind of guy who's like, kids on their phones too much. But if you go, well, your generation was on reading newspapers all the time because that's all you had back then. And he goes, well, it's different though, isn't it? It's like, how is it? Like, I don't like the character Mosely. I don't like what he stands for. He's inconsistent.
You don't like technophobia in general though, do you?
I understand it in the real world. Like when we've had some in-depth discussions, some on this podcast, some outside this podcast. So you know me in that I'm not as scared, but I see the problem.
Yeah.
Like I anticipate the issues. But if you were like, what if we took some hammers to the big AI mainframe? I'd be like, I don't think you understand the issue.
I don't think you understand how this works, Jamie.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty much. I've got so much more I could get into it, but it would be redundant at this point. Like it'd be me nitpicking, and that wouldn't get us anywhere.
You've already assassinated this thing on broad lines. I don't think we need to get any further into the specifics of it.
And once again, to anyone who might still be listening, I just want to reiterate: the art was good.
Who did the art?
I will at least mention the artist because that was the good point. The artist was Sam Lotfi and colorist Jean-Francois Beaulieu.
Well done, you. You made a turd look pretty.
The panels were great. The
panel layout was excellent, wasn't it?
And the individual shots and everything were great.
The faces all looked like faces.
The art was so good that for a few bits I went, this is cool. Because there was good art and it looked like an epic battle was about to happen.
Yeah. I mean, any time when he hulked out, looked fucking fantastic.
When he Super Saiyaned.
When the hammer took over and it was Ryan. When it was hammer time.
Knocked another point off because he never says hammer time.
If it said it's hammer time at least once.
If Batman can say cowabunga, Mosely could have said it's hammer time.
Yeah, fucking A. Oh, imagine how good that would have been.
And you know what? The only reason why I didn't, because again, it takes itself, this comic takes itself too seriously.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think in retrospect, I was very willing to ignore a lot of stuff because I was just like, this looks pretty.
I tell you what, in looking up, I wanted to look up a bit more about all this, and it turns out Boom Studios, they release comic trailers on YouTube for their ones. So I went on the motor one. I didn't get around to actually watching it because I got side-guarded by one of the comments. There's not many comments, but one of them, most of them like, oh, this looks cool. Like, I can't wait to read this. Like, ooh, sci-fi. This looks dope. Like, all once. And then just one comment. The icon is, don't tread on me. So you know it's going to be good. And they go, looks promising. Haven't bought a Boom comic in over a year. It's hard to find entertainment that isn't beating you over the head with left-wing propaganda and written well with likable, relatable characters. I hope comics become more diverse like manga.
What the fuck?
If any comments perfectly encapsulates the all-over tone of Mosely, it's that comment. You are all over the place. I have no idea what you stand for.
I don't know what any of what you just said means.
I recognize the words, but when you put them together in that order, you've lost me. So for those...
Ow, fucking hell, cat. The cat just attacked me in the face.
That was like a full-on, like, you there, slap.
She attacked me facially. I don't know what's going on anymore.
Well, that's the feeling you get from reading Mosely. You don't know what's happening anymore.
No, you're right. In retrospect, I enjoyed it when I read it. But again, I think maybe I'm just having a very prolonged stroke. Because I've liked 2 not great comic books in a row just because I liked them.
I liked Blue Beetle a hell of a lot more than this.
God, that's
Blue
going
Beetle
some.
made a bit more sense to me at the very least.
Yeah.
I understood the motivations.
Yeah.
I had criticism of the character, but in a way where, like, if I met Jamie Reyes, the Blue Beetle, I would be like, why are you doing that? Like, I could imagine him as a real person. I would.
What would you say if you met Mosely?
I'd be like, the future's now, old man. Sit down, put the hammer. And then he would almost...
He would hammer you.
He would almost kill me, but then the Magic Man would be like, don't do that.
This is it. We know that he can't kill you because the Magic Man will stop him.
Because, yeah. And then if you ask why, you're going, 2 layers too deep again.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. It's yeah, there are issues with it, aren't there?
My issues with issues. So that's Mosely. That's what we got from it. And take us home.
If you want to send us an email telling us why Mosely is actually wonderful, you can do so at comicliterate@gmail.com.
Genuinely would be fascinating to hear people talk about why they like it.
If you do, I'm making a commitment now on Ryan's behalf that he will respond with a rebuttal.
Yes.
And then if you want to leave us a review, just wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a review.
If you're a fan of Mosely, I have one question. Why? Not why you're a fan, just why the series.
Why the Last Man?
Why the Last... That was great.
If you're a fan of Mosely, read Why the Last Man, because it's actually good.
I think you'll like the motivations of the characters.
Thank you so much for listening.
Sorry, I've been the grumpy one.
Next week, I'll be the grumpy one. Goodbye.
Goodbye.